A homeless man stands trial for trespassing, caught taking shelter from a freezing storm. To most, he's just another vagrant, until the judge hears his name, and the entire courtroom rises in stunned silence. "Captain Michael Winters, is that you?" the judge whispers. In that moment, the world realizes the truth. The man facing jail once saved her son's life on the battlefield. How do you feel about how we treat our veterans? Drop a comment with the word honor if you believe dignity doesn't disappear, even when the world turns its back. Rain pounded against the courthouse windows as Michael Winters was led into the courtroom in handcuffs. His weathered face was gaunt beneath several days of stubble. Despite his tattered clothes and disheveled appearance, there was something undeniably dignified in his posture. A military straightness to his shoulders that contrasted sharply with his circumstances. How could a man who once defended his country now be sitting in a courtroom, charged with trespassing and theft, simply for seeking shelter from a storm? The questions hanging in the air were almost palpable. The injustice of it all seemed to press down on the room like the storm clouds outside. Where do you stand on this story? Are you watching from the side of compassion or judgment? Michael sat silently at the defendant's table, his expression empty, yet somehow resolute. His hand unconsciously moved to his jacket pocket, fingering something small and metallic hidden within the worn fabric. The prosecuting attorney, Benjamin Wells, stood with the confidence of a man who had never known hunger or cold, reading the charges with practiced disdain. "Your Honor, the defendant was caught breaking into private property owned by Mr. Wallace Turner. When apprehended, he was found with items from the building in his possession. The state seeks maximum penalties for trespassing and theft." Emma Leo, the court-appointed defense attorney, looked nervously at her client. Fresh out of law school, with student loans piling up, this was her first solo case. Her supervisor had made it clear, either she started winning cases, or her position at the public defender's office would be reconsidered. She glanced down at the sparse notes in Michael's file, frustrated by how little she had to work with. During their brief meetings, he had admitted to entering the abandoned building but firmly denied stealing anything. Beyond that, he refused to discuss his past or personal circumstances. 3 nights earlier, as freezing rain had lashed the city, Michael had sought refuge in an abandoned warehouse. The property's owner, Wallace Turner, happened to be checking on the building that night and found Michael huddled in a corner trying to stay warm. Turner immediately called the police, claiming Michael was stealing building materials. In reality, Michael had merely gathered some discarded cardboard and a broken chair to fashion a makeshift bed away from the leaking roof. The responding officers, eager to clear the call and get out of the storm themselves, had arrested Michael without much investigation. In the holding cell, Emma had noticed how Michael meticulously folded his thin blanket with hospital corners each morning, a small ritual that seemed out of place for someone described as a vagrant in the police report. He never complained about the cold cell or the uncomfortable cot, maintaining an almost stoic demeanor throughout the ordeal. When asked about his past, he would shift the conversation or simply fall silent, his eyes revealing a depth of experience that his words concealed. YouTube. Miss Leo, is your client entering a plea today? The judge asked, interrupting Emma's thoughts. Yes, Your Honor. Not guilty to all charges, Emma replied, straightening her posture instinctively. She noticed Michael watching her with an appraising look, as though measuring her resolve. As they left the courtroom after the arraignment, Emma caught sight of a news report on a courthouse monitor. Local veteran shelter faces closure in 72 hours due to funding cuts. With temperatures expected to drop below freezing, over 20 homeless veterans may have nowhere to go. Michael's eyes lingered on the screen, a flicker of emotion briefly breaking through his stoic facade. Back in the consultation room, Emma observed Michael more carefully. When he thought she wasn't looking, his hand again went to his pocket, clutching something like a talisman. As he arranged the papers before him in perfect alignment, Emma's gaze fell on a long, distinctive scar on his wrist, the kind that came from combat, not street life. Watching him fold his jacket with precise, Practiced movements, she suddenly realized that her client was not just any homeless man. There was military discipline in every movement, from his ramrod straight posture despite obvious pain when he walked, to the way he addressed her as ma'am, with unfaltering respect. Emma couldn't possibly imagine what discoveries about her mysterious client would soon shake the very foundations of the courtroom. The raw emotion in Turner's eyes, the quiet tension in Judge Harrington's face, and the ruthless pressure Emma had been facing from every angle. The web of personal vendettas, institutional corruption, and buried truths had finally revealed its full, tangled shape. Emma printed the report, James's investigative notes, and every corroborating document. It was damning. A chain of evidence linking Turner's defense contracting firm directly to the substandard equipment, the deaths it caused, and the years-long cover-up. At the center of it all was Michael Winters, once a decorated officer, now a broken man the system had tried to erase. But not anymore. The next morning, Emma filed an emergency motion to subpoena military records and expose the chain of command, failures tied to precision defense systems. As she submitted the thick file, the court clerk raised an eyebrow at the sheer volume. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly, handing her a stamped copy. "Absolutely," she said. "It's time someone told the truth." Back in the courtroom, Emma rose with poise as Judge Harrington reviewed the motion. There was silence, thick and heavy, as the judge scanned the documents. Emma watched her closely. When the judge reached the section about David Harrington's survival, her hand paused. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. "Miss Liu," the judge finally said, her voice calm but sharp. "What exactly are you asking this court to consider?" Emma took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I am requesting that all charges against my client be dismissed on grounds of malicious prosecution, conflict of interest, and abuse of power. I further request that the court issue an injunction against Wallace Turner from contacting or influencing this proceeding any further, and that a federal inquiry be opened into the procurement fraud and whistleblower retaliation described in these documents." Gasps echoed from the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. Benjamin Wells, the prosecutor, stood so abruptly his chair screeched. "Your Honor, these allegations are outrageous. This is a simple trespassing case." "No, it's not," Emma interrupted, her voice steady. "This case was built on a lie. My client is a decorated war hero who blew the whistle on a defense contractor. That contractor's owner, Mr. Turner, has used his wealth and influence to destroy Captain Winters' life and silence him permanently. This prosecution is not about justice, it's about revenge and cover-up." Judge Harrington held up a hand. "Enough. I will review this material thoroughly. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning." Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy had begun. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust in Emma's face. "Is it true your client saved the judge's son? Are the charges against Wallace Turner going federal? Will Captain Winters testify publicly?" Emma said only one thing. "This is bigger than one case. It's about truth, justice, and accountability, and we're just getting started." That evening, a black SUV idled outside Emma's apartment. When she stepped out to grab her mail, a man emerged from the passenger side, broad-shouldered, military-bearing, face grim. "I'm Agent Carver," he said, flashing a Homeland Security badge. "I believe we need to talk." Inside, Carver laid out classified documents. "Your work on this case flagged multiple red notices across our internal database. Turner's company has been under quiet investigation for years, but no one's had enough to go public. Until now." He tapped the folder. "With Captain Winters' testimony and your evidence, we can reopen the procurement fraud case. But there's risk, high risk. Turner has deep ties. If we move forward, we do it together. Are you in?" Emma nodded. "Yes. All the way." Later that night, Michael sat in his cell, staring at the tarnished challenge coin in his hand. For years, it had been a reminder of failure, betrayal, and pain. Now it was something else, a symbol of honor reclaimed. The next morning, when the courtroom reconvened, the atmosphere was electric. Emma entered with new resolve. Behind her, flanked by two federal agents, walked Agent Carver and Captain Michael Winters in full dress uniform, even Turner paled. Judge Harrington entered. After a long pause, she cleared her throat. After reviewing the motion and supporting documentation, she said slowly, "I find substantial evidence of misconduct and conflict of interest. The charges against Captain Winters are hereby dismissed, with prejudice." There was a stunned silence. "Furthermore," she continued, "this court is recommending immediate investigation into the actions of Wallace Turner and Precision Defense Systems. I have forwarded the relevant files to federal authorities." Turner stood red-faced. "This is a disgrace, a smear job. I'll sue—" "Sit down, Mr. Turner," the judge snapped, steel in her voice, "or I'll have you removed from this courtroom." Then she turned to Michael. "Captain Winters, thank you for your service and for saving my son." Michael gave a small, respectful nod. Emotion played behind his eyes, but he stood tall, his back straight, his uniform crisp. Outside, the press swarmed. Michael gave one brief statement. "Served my country. I told the truth. That's all I ever wanted to do." Emma stood beside him as the snow fell softly around them. The truth was finally out. Justice, at last, had begun to turn its wheels, and this time, it wouldn't stop. Resolution and legacy, which will tie up all remaining arcs, Michael's redemption, Turner's downfall, the federal inquiry, and Emma's personal transformation. Absolutely powerful material. You're very close to a perfect emotional crescendo. Below is a professional polishing of this section, correcting grammar, punctuation, tense consistency, and sentence flow while retaining your tone, emotional stakes, and pacing. I've maintained the documentary courtroom drama tone while heightening clarity and tension. She needed to fight back, but she had no idea just how explosive the coming confrontation would be. Emma ran through the pouring rain toward the courthouse, her case files protected under her coat. She was no longer an employee of the public defender's office, but she remained Michael's attorney of record, a technicality she was now exploiting to stay on the case. Her hair was plastered to her face, her suit soaked, but her eyes burned with defiant purpose. Inside the courtroom was unusually crowded. Word had spread about the bizarre and troubling circumstances, drawing in veterans, reporters, and curious onlookers. Turner sat stiffly behind the prosecution table, impeccably dressed and barely hiding his contempt. Benjamin Wells, the prosecutor, looked smug, confident in his argument and in the powerful man behind it. Judge Harrington called the court to order, her gaze sweeping the room before settling, briefly but noticeably, on Michael. There was something in her expression, a question, a memory. Struggling to surface, Emma called her first witness. "Samuel Rodriguez," she said. Sam limped up to the stand, his prosthetic leg visible beneath his khaki pants. "I've worked with many veterans," Sam testified. "The ones who end up on the streets aren't there because they're lazy or criminals. They're there because the system failed them." He turned toward the jury. "Michael Winters is one of those men. He served with honor and was abandoned when he needed help the most." Emma let the moment hang before asking, "Mr. Rodriguez, can you tell us about the Lion's main operation?" Turner shifted, his knuckles whitening on the table's edge. Wells immediately objected. "Your Honor, that's irrelevant to a simple trespassing case." "I'm establishing my client's background and character," Emma countered. "And I intend to show that Mr. Turner's prosecution is motivated by personal animus, not a legitimate concern over property rights." Judge Harrington narrowed her eyes. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, counselor." Sam described the mission. In general terms, how Bravo Unit had been ambushed after critical equipment failed. The radios had gone dead, weapons jammed, body armor didn't stop the rounds it was supposed to. 12 good soldiers died that day, Emma asked, calmly but clearly. "And who supplied that equipment?" "Precision Defense Systems," Sam said, locking eyes with Turner, a company owned by Wallace Turner. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Turner's face flushed dark red. Wells was on his feet, shouting objections, but Judge Harrington banged her gavel for silence. Emma stood firm, her voice unwavering. She cited an obscure statute about veteran protections that momentarily stunned the seasoned prosecutor. The gallery watched in awe as a young, unemployed lawyer began systematically dismantling the case. Meanwhile, James Walters, still investigating, had tracked down a former secretary of Turner's. She confirmed what Emma had suspected. Turner had monitored the abandoned building through security cameras. He recognized the captain immediately. James told Emma during a recess. He's been waiting for a chance to get at him legally. When Michael took the stand, the room fell completely silent. Despite his ragged appearance, there was a dignity to him, a quiet strength that drew everyone's attention. He spoke clearly, recounting how he sought shelter during a violent storm, denying any theft or damage to the property. Then Emma pivoted. "Captain Winters," she said, "can you tell the court about your role in the Lion's main operation?" Michael hesitated, glancing at Turner, whose expression had hardened into open hatred. "I was the commanding officer of Bravo Unit. We were assigned to secure a communications outpost that had gone silent. A standard mission until the equipment started failing. Radios went dead, weapons jammed. We were surrounded and taking casualties." He paused, gathering himself. "I ordered the unit to split, half to high ground to re-establish comms, the other half to secure an extraction point." As Michael spoke, Judge Harrington leaned forward. Her gaze moved between him and Turner, the puzzle slowly assembling in her mind. Suddenly, Turner stood, his voice breaking the silence. "He sacrificed my son," he shouted, pointing at Michael. "Johnny died because of his orders." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. Wells leapt up, trying to pull Turner back into his seat, but the damage was done. Turner's true motive, revenge, was now laid bare before the court. "Your Honor," Emma said firmly, seizing the moment, "I move for immediate dismissal. Mr. Turner has just revealed a personal vendetta against my client. This is not about trespassing. This is about revenge." Judge Harrington looked pale. She paused, for a moment before speaking. "We'll take a 30-minute recess," she said tightly. "Counselors in my chambers now." Outside, the veteran shelter had officially closed its doors. 20 former service members now faced a bitter night on the streets. Snow had begun to fall. In chambers, Judge Harrington confronted Turner and Wells directly. "Is what he's saying true?" she asked, her tone cold. "Is this about personal revenge?" Wells sputtered excuses. Turner didn't bother pretending anymore. "That man got my son killed," he said flatly. "The system let him walk away. I found another way to get justice. By falsely accusing him of theft? By using your influence to weaponize the court?" Her voice cut like a blade. "That's not justice, Mr. Turner, that's abusive process." Back in the courtroom, Emma stood again. "Captain Winters, please state your full name and former rank for the record." Michael straightened. Years of military training settling into his posture. "Captain Michael Andrew Winters, United States Army Special Forces, Bravo Unit Commander." There was a beat of silence. Then Judge Harrington rose from her seat, visibly shaken. "Captain Winters," she said slowly. "The officer who led the rescue mission for the stranded communications team during Operation Lion's Mane?" The courtroom went still. "Yes, Your Honor," Michael replied quietly. "The officer who refused to abandon his team, despite direct orders to retreat, who went back into active combat to save 6 trapped soldiers, including Lieutenant David Harrington." The silence was absolute. "My son," Judge Harrington said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved my son's life." Sunlight broke through the courthouse windows, illuminating Michael's face. For a moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Judge Harrington stood tall before the bench. "Captain Winters led a rescue mission when everyone else had written us off," she said, addressing the room. "When comms failed and my son's team was trapped, command ordered a full retreat. Captain Winters refused. He went back in. He extracted the survivors, at great personal risk." Michael met her eyes. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, the courtroom no longer saw a homeless man. They saw the hero he truly was. "I must recuse myself from this case immediately," Judge Harrington said, regaining composure. "But I want the record to show that Captain Winters received the Silver Star for his actions. He saved 6 lives, including my son's, despite direct orders and at the risk of court-martial. The room buzzed. The truth had shattered the narrative. The defendant wasn't a vagrant. He was a war hero, left behind by the very system he once served. Judge Richard Coleman, a former JAG officer, was appointed to resume proceedings. James Walters published his expose online. It detailed Turner's corruption, his vendetta, and the buried whistleblower report Michael had filed years ago. The story went viral. National media picked it up. Veteran advocacy groups mobilized. The next time Michael walked into court, every veteran in the gallery rose to their feet, standing at attention in a silent salute. One by one, others stood. Only Turner and his team remained seated. The court will now hear arguments on the defense's motion to dismiss, Judge Coleman announced. Emma stepped forward, galvanized by everything that had happened. Your Honor, the evidence is clear, she said. Mr. Turner knew exactly who Captain Winters was. This prosecution was never about protecting property. It was personal revenge. She presented internal memos from Turner's company, documents showing they knew the equipment was defective but shipped it anyway. Financial records showed bribes to procurement officials. Evidence confirmed Turner had destroyed Michael's reputation after he blew the whistle. Then Turner was called back to the stand. Under Emma's cross-examination, the mask finally fell. The courtroom braced for what would come next. Legacy and resolution. I'll make sure it lands with maximum emotional power and lasting audience impact. Despite Lieutenant Turner's presence, our efforts were thwarted by relentless enemy fire and critical equipment failures. Radios failed. Weapons jammed. We couldn't coordinate effectively. I made the best decisions possible with the information available. Every life lost that day weighs heavily on me, without exception. When questioned about his subsequent whistleblowing, Michael spoke without bitterness. I reported the equipment failures not out of resentment but to ensure no other unit would endure the same fate. At the time, I was unaware of Mr. Turner's ties to the company supplying the faulty gear. My only concern was protecting my fellow soldiers. Once both sides had presented their cases, the outcome seemed inevitable. Judge Coleman dismissed all charges against Michael, citing both the necessity defense and clear evidence of malicious prosecution. The courtroom erupted in applause. Benjamin Wells, the prosecutor who had initially dismissed Michael and Emma's efforts, approached them with a humbled expression. I should have investigated more thoroughly, he admitted. I let Turner's status influence me. I apologize to both of you. Veterans and supporters crowded around Michael. Despite his ragged clothes and years of hardship, his bearing commanded respect. Raising his hand for silence, he addressed the room. There's one truth I've held on to through everything. Honor doesn't fade, even when the world turns its back on you. It lives inside us, beyond anyone's reach. Every veteran knows this, whether in uniform or on the streets. As the crowd absorbed his words, the courtroom doors opened. A tall, distinguished man in full military dress entered, medals gleaming. Veterans immediately recognized General Raymond Martinez and rose to attention. Turner, witnessing this display of respect toward Michael and the general, realized too late he had underestimated not just one man, but an entire community united by service and sacrifice. Outside, street lamps cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as General Martinez approached Michael. Snow fell quietly, a stark contrast to the emotional weight of the moment. Captain Winters, Martinez said, extending his hand. It's been a long time. Michael straightened instinctively. General Martinez, sir, I've been following your case closely. The general continued. The Army has some amends to make. In a hastily arranged conference room, Martinez revealed the truth. Michael's service record had been altered. The investigation into his whistleblowing was deliberately sabotaged. I've spent the last year building a case against those responsible. Today's events have finally brought everything to light. Producing official documents, Martinez declared, effective immediately, your discharge status is corrected to honorable. Your rank, decorations, Back pay and benefits will be restored. He paused, his expression grave. It doesn't make up for 7 years of injustice, but it's a start. When the trial resumed the next day, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Judge Coleman presided with deep understanding of military protocol and law. Michael, now addressed respectfully as Captain Winters, carried himself with renewed confidence. The burden of disgrace lifted. Turner's facade crumbled during testimony. When questioned about his company's role in supplying defective equipment, he was defensive and evasive. We met the contract specifications, he insisted. If corners were cut, it was because the military's procurement encouraged it. We delivered what was paid for. Emma's cross-examination was relentless, supported by documentation. From General Martinez and investigative reports, she exposed Turner's company's falsification of test results, bribery, and delivery of dangerously defective equipment. When Captain Winters reported these failures, you used political connections to discredit him and have him discharged. Isn't that true? Emma pressed. Turner stiffened. I protected my company's reputation. Even though your son died because of your company's defective equipment, even though Captain Winters tried to save him. Emma's voice was steady. Turner's face twisted with rage and grief. He should have tried harder. He made the wrong choice. No, Mr. Turner, Emma said quietly but firmly. You made the wrong choice when you valued profits over American soldiers' lives. You made the wrong choice when you sought revenge instead of accountability. And you've been making that wrong choice for 7 years. As Turner's corruption unraveled, Benjamin Wells stood. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the state moves to withdraw all charges against Captain Winters. We also request immediate investigation into Mr. Turner for perjury, obstruction of justice, and filing false reports. Judge Coleman granted both motions. The courtroom erupted once more as Michael stood vindicated. Emma, who risked her career to fight for justice, was soon surrounded by job offers from firms specializing in veterans' rights. You showed real courage, counselor, Michael said. Not many lawyers would risk their career for a homeless client. Not many clients would be worth it, Emma smiled. But you definitely are. As Michael prepared to leave, General Martinez approached. The Army needs officers like you, Captain. Men of principle who put their troops first. We're launching a new veterans advocacy program within the JAG Corps. We could use your experience. Michael considered the offer. I appreciate that, sir, but I might be more valuable elsewhere. Too many veterans are still on the streets, fighting battles no one sees. Outside, a crowd of veterans awaited him. Among them, a tall man in his early 30s stepped forward. Captain Winters, I'm David Harrington. You probably don't remember me. Michael recognized him instantly. Of course I do. You shielded Corporal Ramirez with your own body after he was hit. David's eyes shimmered with tears. I never got to thank you properly. None of us did. Their reunion was interrupted by another veteran pushing through the crowd. Captain, we need your help. The shelter's closed. 20 of us have nowhere to go tonight. Temperatures are dropping below freezing. Michael looked toward Turner, now escorted to a police car. Without hesitation, he turned to General Martinez. Sir, Turner Properties owns an empty office building on 3rd Street. I think the owner might be willing to make it available as temporary housing. Martinez smiled grimly. I believe that can be arranged immediately. That night, as snow blanketed the city, 20 veterans found shelter in the warm, secure building Turner had once left empty while pursuing his vendetta. Emma worked with officials to secure emergency authorization, while Michael organized the space with military precision. Beds, warm food, medical supplies. News spread rapidly. Donations poured in. Volunteers arrived with blankets, food, and medical care. Local businesses offered jobs. A doctor provided free checkups. Meanwhile, Turner faced the consequences. Released on bail but under multiple investigations, he returned home to find reporters camped outside his mansion. Calls from nervous partners and political allies flooded his phone. His company's stock plummeted. Contracts were suspended. His empire began to crumble. Michael stood at the shelter's window watching snow fall. After 7 years, the weight of disgrace lifted. Honor doesn't fade, he had said. Now he felt those words deep in his bones. His honor had sustained him through homelessness, rejection, despair. Now the world recognized it too. Under streetlights, Michael stood before the newly named Bravo House, an emergency shelter for veterans. The sign above the door read, "No one faces winter alone." In just 1 week, Michael's life had transformed. His military benefits restored, medals returned, a formal apology issued. Emma partnered with a veterans advocacy group, continuing her fight. Bravo House was now a beacon. Beds, kitchen, medical facilities, a computer lab. Local businesses donated furniture. Medical professionals volunteered time. Turner's fall was swift. Federal investigations revealed years of fraud and negligence. Allies abandoned him. His holdings were sold to settle lawsuits, with several properties designated for affordable veteran housing. 3 months later, at the official dedication of Bravo House, Michael addressed the crowd, no longer gaunt and weathered, but a commanding officer in crisp uniform. "What happened to me should never happen to any veteran," he said. "No one who serves their country should end up homeless because they stood for what's right. Bravo House isn't just a shelter, it's a promise. A promise that no veteran stands alone, that service will be honored, that sacrifice will be respected." 1 year later, Bravo House expanded into a network of veteran support centers statewide. The lawsuit against Turner's company resulted in hundreds of millions dedicated to veterans and families of the fallen. Michael found new purpose as director of Bravo House and national advocate for veterans. His congressional testimony led to VA reforms and increased protections for military whistleblowers. David Harrington worked alongside him, creating mentorship programs to guide newly discharged service members. As morning light bathed the city, Michael reflected on the words that had sustained him. Honor doesn't fade. Through homelessness, disgrace, persecution, it remained his guiding light. With his reputation restored and a new mission ahead, Captain Michael Winters knew this honor would light his path forward, not just for himself, but for every veteran still fighting their way home. What one word would you choose to represent your feelings about this story? Share it below and help spread the message of honor and gratitude.